Hi, folks. With Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation when you're in your car or your truck or going along in public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about is it even possible to come up with a definition of white privilege? Does it exist? If so, how does it exist? Now, the activists. It's claimed by activists and all sorts of propagandists, globalist-controlled and funded propagandists, in their quest to break down and destroy white society, which is seen as an obstacle to the globalization project. What they're claiming that it exists everywhere. It's omnipresent, but it's invisible, and if you can't see it, then it's because you're Hitler, and this sort of stuff. So now. I haven't been able to find an objective definition of white privilege. Those who insist that it exists, they don't explain it or define it. They'll just say, well, gee, outcomes are different. Look, there's more black people getting arrested by the police than white people. There you go. That's proof of white privilege. And if you deny it or you can't see it, then you are Hitler. And that's the line that they go to. And they're very rarely, if at all, held to account. And you see sort of man on the street or person on the street type interviews where if people are pressed on providing a proper definition, an objective definition, then they'll just walk away or again accuse the questioner of being Hitler. So I do want to cover this. Now let's have a look at the definitions that are on the internet here. Now I've gone, there's two leading, they're leftist journals, but what is they're determining that white privilege exists. Now, again, it's very disingenuous. Do they go to Africa and say, well, African black majority countries have black privilege? No, they don't. Do the activists go to China and say, well, the Chinese majority there, do they have Chinese privilege? They don't go there and do that. Or Mongolian people having Mongolian privilege, they don't do that. Japanese people having Japanese, they don't do that. It's only in white countries. Only white countries have this standard applied to them. So you know already that it's bullshit because of that. But nonetheless, let's treat it, let's pretend that it's serious, which it isn't, but let's pretend that it's serious. Because if they were serious about this privilege thing, they would apply that standard equally across all countries, all places, and all parts of the globe. And they don't. It's only applied to white countries. So the number, this is one list that I'm reading off here of, now this is a leftist journal, so you'd need to sort of take that into account, but this is their definition of privilege, white privilege. So you have a positive relationship with the police. The police patrol affluent white neighborhoods more rigorously and more often than they would poor black neighborhoods. And why is that? It's because of the white people, they get that benefit, whereas the black people have to fend for themselves. No, is it because of that? Or is it because the black areas are so dangerous and there are so many shootouts and so many police get shot that they're reluctant to go in those areas unless they absolutely have to? The idea of driving around in a patrol car in a high crime black neighborhood, why would you want to do that? Even if you're a black police officer, why would you want to do that? Similarly, if there is an altercation with a black citizen, the city government's likely to support the black person, regardless of to what extent. I was just out jogging or something like that. So you can see why that. Now, is that an example of black privilege, of white privilege? No, it's not. It's a natural result, an organic result of life on the ground. If there was a very high level of policing in the black neighborhoods to stop the crime, then they would simply reverse and say, see, the white people aren't oppressed like that. So that's an example of white privilege. So it doesn't matter whichever way you go on this, they're able to paint it as white privilege. So they're saying white people have a better relationship with the police. And then in the sort of the final sort of what they think is the kill shot, look, more black people get arrested than white people relative to population. So there you go. That's the proof. What else do we need? And the reality is that black people commit more crimes. So They're talking about an outcome measurement only, with not looking at any of the inputs. They're saying that white children get, that this is school students here, white children don't get detention as often as black children. Well, yeah, okay. Now, if you if you look at the there was a school brawl punch up in an area, I suppose about 10 kilometres away from where we live, and we're going past because it was an all-in brawl. The school kids, and all the school kids were brown. There wasn't a white kid in sight, and that just sort of tells you what's going on here. Black children, and certainly my own experience at school. I was briefly in a school that had a high proportion of migrants in it when I was a kid, mercifully brief, by the way. And the brown kids were always, I mean, you would get some white kids that would be a problem, but the brown and the white kids that were the problem were nearly always Irish, by the way. But the brown and darker skinned kids were always the problem, always misbehaving, stealing and doing all sorts of things. In the change, I've mentioned this before, in the change rooms, like at sports, in the change rooms, one of them would defecate in the middle of the change room floor, then try and grab white kids and push them into the turd, and they thought this was hilariously funny. And anyway, they would hang around in gangs. Oh fuck! So this is a difference in behaviour. If you behave badly, and if you behave in a disruptive manner, you will get detention more often. So the idea that black kids get more detention than white kids means white privilege. It doesn't mean anything of the sort. That's nonsense. So again, they use the outcomes thing to allegedly prove. Now there's the next one is that white schools have better facilities and better or particularly better teachers, but better facilities than black schools, or majority black schools versus majority white schools. And the more white the school is, the more equipment and benefits they have. And they're saying this is white privilege because the students have parents, both parents are living at home, both parents are working in better jobs because they studied harder and so on. So there's more resources. And when I moved from the high migrant school, again mercifully brief, into an all white upper middle class school, the resources were vastly different. Students didn't steal things, they didn't break things. There was a capacity for the school to have better teachers teaching more advanced courses and subjects. There was after school lessons for kids that wanted to go on and learn, which many of them did attend. And there was much more. The school library was very well stocked. And again, kids didn't steal books, and so there was a whole lot of things that made the school different, but better behavior, better teachers, more resources. But that's not a white privilege thing. That's a behavioral privilege thing. And we have to draw a distinction there. It's important to draw that distinction. That in a majority white country, more of the lessons, as they claim white privilege, in a majority white country, more of the school lessons are about white people and white history. Well, duh. Now, on top of that, if you're looking at the modern technological world, white people invented fucking everything, pretty much. That doesn't mean it wasn't improved upon by, say, Japanese manufacturing techniques and so on. That's happened. But the modern world has been 99.9% invented by white people. So of course you're going to talk. History is going to cover white people more often than any other race. Does that mean it's white privilege? No, it means the white people invented it. That's how it was. Well, why don't you talk about black history? Well, this in terms of modern technology, black people were in the Stone Age, when white people turned up, and continued to stay in the Stone Age for hundreds of years thereafter, or after the Arabs turned up. The Arabs in 800, 900 AD were technologically, pretty impressive in a lot of ways. But for some reason, that barely affected black Africans and so on. So of course you're going in white majority countries learning about the modern technological world that was 99% created by white people. Of course, you're going to learn about white people. What the fuck do you think? Are you going to talk about Stone Age people? Now, they have it both ways here. They say on one side that there's no black history covered, therefore that's white privilege. Then on the other side, they say, well, black history, because it's not technological like white history is in terms of the modern technological world, that black people are made to look stupid because they were in the Stone Age and not in the advanced technological age or the scientific age. Therefore, that's white privilege. So if you don't talk about black history, it's white privilege. If you do talk about it, because it's not covered in glory and lots of achievements, then that's also white privilege. So they have it both ways. Very, very disingenuous here. So that's number 4. Number 5 is that books in the library. Now, like I passed by a library a little while ago, actually, in a shopping centre. The library is just at the side of where the parking lot is, and we were walking along there and looking inside. There, I wouldn't call it packed, but there was quite a few school-age kids in there. And other than brown Asian people, all of the kids, well, I didn't see a single black kid in there. So the library says that in a white majority country, not a black majority country, not Africa, not China, but in a white majority country, the majority of the books contain white people in it. Like, wow, in a white majority country, most of the books are about white people, including, as this thing says here, children books. And out of they're saying here, out of 2,200 or 2,100 children's books, they claim, this is what they claim, only 100 contained majority black images. Well, so it's a white majority country, you fucking morons. Now, having been traveled the world many times over on business, when I go into a bookshop in China or another non-white country, what do I see? Nearly all the books are about the local race. So what do I say? Oh, look at all that brown privilege. Oh no, those racist fucking Nazis. I don't even think that. The thought doesn't cross my mind. I'm in a brown majority country. I expect to see brown books everywhere and hardly any white books. That's what you do expect. That's it. That's quite natural. So why aren't they held to that same account of white supremacy and Hitler? So it's, again, only white people are held to this standard. Of course, you're going to find majority white books in a white majority country. What else would you expect? Is that an example of white privilege? Of course not. So the next one is that the media, most of the people reading the media stories are white in a white majority countries. Most of the stories that the media cover are about, in a positive light, that they claim here, are about white people, and they make absolutely insane claims that what white killers are given as in murders, white murderers are given a totally free pass and they're humanized and made to look like really good people, whereas black people are demonized and dehumanized. It's the exact opposite, if you don't mind. So they quote a bias here from a black lesbian race hustler, and she's supposed to be the expert they're quoting on this one. Now, in a white majority country, the majority of news anchors and journalists white in a white majority country. Well, yeah, and that's unusual. How? Why? What is it meant to be a black majority of? Is there meant to be a majority of black journalists or news anchors to represent 13% of the population? The black news anchors and so on, and journos and people on the street doing we're outside of the police station, those sort of things. Black people are heavily overrepresented. White people are very underrepresented. That's the fact. And yet here they claim that there's blatant bias against black people, and every journalist and every talking head is white. That's a lie. That's an outrageous lie. But they're claiming that's another example of white privilege, which it isn't. Again, more lies. If the white privilege is so bad, you don't need to tell lies. The facts will support it. So here we go. Here now, here's another one that they talk about how black people are misrepresented. Now, they have two stories here about white kids that are arrested for a burglary, and a group of black people were arrested for a burglary, and they're saying that the black people were more negatively depicted than the white people. Okay, I do accept that on the fact, but again, they're looking at the outcome here. What are the inputs? The black people who did the burglary are all career criminals. They beat the shit out of some guy who didn't die in the end, like some sort of security guard who didn't die in the end, but has injuries that will cripple him for the rest of his life, handicap him for the rest of his life. And they also, the amount that and the value of what they stole. The white kids didn't damage any property. They took didn't beat anyone up. They've never been in trouble with the police before, and the value that they stole was like 1/10 of what the black people stole. But they pick these up and say, well, look, the white people are depicted positively, whereas the black people are not. No, the situation is vastly different. The white people weren't career criminals. Also, the average age of the career criminal black people was like 30, whereas the white kids were 19. The average age, and so there's a big difference in the inputs, the crimes, the level of crime, the amount of damage they caused, the amount they stole. So that's why it's depicted differently, I would argue. So that's not an example of white privilege. Again, more lies about it. Now, the next one they say is that black people have a stereotype that they commit crimes more often than others, and than other races, not white people they're claiming in this instance, and that stereotype causes them to be treated differently. Now, they pick one example from nearly 50 years ago about some white guy who allegedly tried to bomb or place some explosive device in a church that's got a all black thing, and that well, they shot. That's it. That's all the proof you need. Now the other cases of all the black people that kill white people, nah, let's not talk about that. So they're saying that interracial atrocities are 100% caused by white people, when the facts are quite clearly the other way. So this is. Now, on top of that, they talk about that if a black person wants to escape a violent neighborhood, which is a black neighborhood, they don't have the money to do it, whereas a white person that wants to move away from a violent neighborhood would have more resources, higher income, that sort of stuff. And so they could move to a less crime-ridden neighborhood. That's white privilege. No, it's not. What nonsense. We talk about grasping at fucking straws. What bullshit. Now, the next white privilege thing is that white people can say, well, slavery was a long time ago. It doesn't matter anymore. So whereas they can say, no, white people must be shamed and blamed for slavery for all time. For all time. Only white people did it. Well, hold on. Stop. What about all the Arabic slavery? What about the Barbary Pirate? No. It's only white people ever did it, and they were the bastards because they're all Hitler and they're all fascist, and we must shame them, blame them forever, for all time. And that's an absolute lie. And again, this is disingenuous. Hold all slavery to the same standard. Say that the Barbary pirates were bad. Say that the Irish slavers that were enslaving people from modern day Wales and so on, that they were bad. That the Arab slavers were who in terms of the amount of slaves they captured and took to as slaves to the Arabian states. They were the biggest slavers by far. What about the Ottoman Empire, though, is to enslave young white children and turn them into soldiers and and various servants and hack goons and so on. What about them? But not only white people are held to this standard. So I reject that and say, well, white people have to be held guilty for all time. Well, no. So again, that's not a not a white privilege. Now the next one they have is that white people don't suffer any racism, but everyone else does, or black people do in particular. And white people don't. I mean, you've got to be kidding. There are so many companies across businesses across the Western world, government departments, schools, the list goes on, that give heavily favourable treatment to non-whites, whereas white people still have to meet the high standard. Same goes for the justice system. The law now is seen as a part of a wider social engineering exercise in restorative justice. And run by ideological fanatics. And so the idea of being that white people are completely insulated from the effects or the supposed effects of racism is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And the idea that black people suffer disproportionately just because of the colour of their skin is equally ridiculous. And number 10, they say, well, if you're not on board with the racism, with this white privilege thing, and accepting it and agreeing with it and unquestioningly accepting it, then you're a rabid racist. You are fucking Hitler. So these are things. So I just wanted to sort of introduce that so you get an idea of how ridiculous the whole thing is. But let's have a look at in my view of privilege and in the effort to define it. There were kids at school that worked a lot harder than I did. They studied, they hit the books and they really, some of them were ordinary students. They weren't naturally bright kids, but they, while I was out, playing sports or down at the beach or something, they were hitting the books, and they would often do better than me in exams. Now, being sort of somewhat competitive, I guess I didn't like that, because I used to think, well, I'm smarter than that guy. How can he be? But he studied really hard. I mean, he revised everything. He went over it again and again. So that's why he worked harder. He wasn't brighter. He worked hard. He had no privilege. He had no privilege over me at all. He just worked harder. Now, there were kids that were just naturally bright. They just picked things up, like that. And I wasn't too bad in that department, but their kids were better. And I was, I just accepted that. Okay, well, so-and-so is really sharp and really smart, and I accept that. And he would do better than me in exams. And okay, well, that's kind of how it is. And I didn't think to perceive that someone had privilege over me. I just thought they'd worked harder or they were smarter. There were guys who were better looking and got more chicks and so on. But I accepted, well, the guy looks like one of those fucking Greek statues. No wonder he's getting so many chicks. And I didn't think about it as privilege or lack of it. Now, in the case of, say, patronage or nepotism or big inheritance, that I would see as privilege. But was irritating sometimes. The chairman of the board's wastrel, useless nephew getting appointed to a serious, well-paid job in the company, that would piss me off. But there wasn't much of that. That was, in the overall scheme of things, that was actually quite rare. So there weren't enough. If it was happening all the time every day, then I would go, but it wasn't. It was rare, and I just accepted. Look, it's a rich, well-connected, powerful family, if you like, and they're giving their relatives cozy plum jobs, and not that I liked it or agreed with it, but it's how the world is, and I just accepted that. But it was rare, so it's not like I had to worry about it all the time. Now, in things like sports, say playing football, there were kids that turned up for training every day, and or every time there's a training session, they'll be there busting their ass on the field, training and practicing and so on. And I didn't. I'd go training once a week, sometimes not even that. So they were much better at it, the sports. They were much better at it than me. And now some had natural things like natural athletic ability or anticipation or a sense of timing. I was ordinary in those areas, but they some kids were quite good at it. Not many, but some were. And so when it came to picking the district team, the kids that put the most time, or that either naturally talented, the kids that put the most time into it were practicing the hardest. They were the better ones. They got picked for the team, and so I accepted that. It was, they worked harder. That's why they're there, and I'm not. And again, I didn't question it. The same goes for being in the martial arts game. There were people who were absolutely committed to it and were turning up for, they'd be training 4 or 5 nights a week. They do additional, they go to every tournament for practice that they could get to, and they had jobs as like storeman packers and so on, so they could do it. I had an executive gig, so I had nowhere near the discretion of time, but I would only turn up for 1 night a week or 1 night a fortnight, actually. And so these guys were better than me. So, if I go into a tournament, I'd get my ass kicked, not because they were better, on a one-for-one basis, but because they worked harder, they practiced harder, they applied themselves more rigorously than I did. They should have been better in the overall scheme of things, but I accepted that. I didn't see it as an issue of privilege. And some of them weren't white. I didn't think, oh, look at that brown privilege. They work harder at it than I do. The list goes on. I played tennis for a little bit. I was never very good at it, but there was I didn't practice much at it. But there were guys. I remember there was a guy who used to go out, and there was a particular sort of wall in the middle of one end of a basketball court. It was a wall 3 or 4 meters wide and a couple of meters high, and he used to practice hitting the tennis ball against that to sharpen up his timing and his skills. And I didn't. I put no time into the tennis, or hardly any. So I had a match against him. He blasted me off the court. I remember it annoyed me at the time because there was a chick there that I was trying to impress. But anyway, he blasted me off the court, but I didn't think there was privilege. I just realized this guy works really hard at his game, and he deserves to reap the benefits of that. So we need to understand this. Now, again, I've mentioned before that I've hired black people in the past, and they seem to be completely unable to make the relationship between hard work, delaying gratification, and these sorts of things, and the payoff. They just cannot seem to comprehend it. I don't know why. I was sort of perplexed because I'd be sitting down with a guy who's a black guy and trying to explain, well, if you put the work in, the likelihood that you'll derive a benefit becomes much greater. And well, when will I have this benefit? I want it now. I want it tomorrow, today, within an hour's time, within 5 minutes. I don't want to have to wait until next week. And so there was an inability to delay gratification, but there was an inability to see the relationship between hard work and preparation and practice and all, and a payoff, a benefit or a dividend. They just couldn't seem to see it, or certainly not the ones I came across. And I was selecting what I thought were the brighter ones, and they just wouldn't turn up for work. They'd come in late. They'd goof off. They'd sit around wanting to tell tall stories. Some of them are quite good, actually. Wanting to tell tall stories, wouldn't do any work. When I'd say, well, what are you doing? Like, hey, do you mind doing some work? They would treat that as, hey, well, what do you mean? Hey, don't sort of push me around. And these same people, when they were out, they didn't do it to me because I was the boss, but when they'd be out and about, they were always coming in with some sort of like a fat lip or a bruise or something like that, because someone had disrespected them. They believed. So, very, very touchy. Someone had disrespected them, and so they were constantly saying, you disrespected me, I'm going to fight you. And now these are guys in their late 20s, in their 30s. Why are you doing that? I remember talking to this guy. He's sitting, this is coming to my office and around saying, why are you doing this? It's not a good look. You're turning up for work with a fat lip so often. Why? What is this disrespect you're talking about? And I assumed it would. Well, first off, I thought maybe someone's coming up and using the N word or something like that, something pretty serious that would offend a lot of people, or some people. And oh no, this guy brushed past me, when we were queuing up for the restaurant, and I thought he was disrespecting me, so I went over and said, "Hey, you better apologize to me, or I'm going to fight you." And he told me to get lost. So I said, "You want to sort this out outside?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we went outside, and we were fighting you're fighting in the street outside the restaurant because you think he brushed past you in a disrespectful way. I mean, you're kidding me, right? Oh no, why should I put up with disrespect? And or this guy, he looked at my wife in a strange way, so I told him he better apologize to her. And he said, "Get lost." So I said, "Yeah," and I hit him, and then he hit me. And like, what? I mean, you think he might have looked at your wife? I mean, give me a break here. No one can be that touchy, surely. But he had this massive sort of, and others too, massive chip on their shoulder. So the idea of white privilege clearly doesn't exist. Not a single example they put forward of what is supposed to constitute white privilege, or for that matter, define it. It's all ideological hysteria. None of it is real. It's a complete and utter fantasy. And again, just to summarize how disingenuous it is, that same standard is not applied to any other race except for white people, and in white majority countries. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.